I really didn't have time to go get all of my leafy greens from my a local farmer, whether it's the local farm or the farmer's market, and chop them all up. Honestly, at some point you just have to say what's the higher priority. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy more packaged stuff because it's more important for me to have healthy, high quality food and feed my son vegetables. And so I really think about, oftentimes from a business perspective, you have to understand the consumer, the client, the user, call it, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, understanding, some of those behaviors, decision points from a consumer perspective is absolutely critical as well.
What if doing less harm isn't enough? On a sun-baked river in the Grand Canyon, Carrie Freeman realized that shrinking our footprint won't build the future. We have to create it. That insight pulled her from the comfort of reduce, reduce, reduce into the bigger arena of business as a lever for good, eventually helping build Intel's early sustainability function and guiding companies like Nike through systems maps that reveal where innovation truly lies. And then years later, a simple question from a coach, "How are you?" sparked a second pivot. A brave unraveling of a life that looked perfect on paper, but wasn't honest inside. Today, Carrie blends strategy with surrender, mapping systems, listening to the body, and leading a winery and distillery while building a speaking and coaching platform. We'll start with the Canyon moment, dive into Intel and SecondMuse, stress test food and grocery case, and then walk through the personal transformation that followed in 2022. Stay with us. This one is equal parts blueprint and Braveheart. Carrie, welcome to the One Away Show.
Hi, Bryan. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for being here as well. We for those that don't know, we got her AC turned off. We weren't going to be able to do this, but turned some knobs and it's blasting heat. So here we are. Carrie, I'm glad we could make this happen today.
Me too. Hopefully it doesn't get too hot.
That's right. For those that, let's get started. So, Carrie, what is your one away moment that you want to share with us today?
Oh, this is great. I've had a few one-away moments. I think the first one-away moment that I had, I was sitting in the Grand Canyon on a multi-week river trip, and I'd had a few of those, and with a bunch of wonderful people. And at that point in time, I kind of had the work hard, play hard, and play hard always meant being outside. And there's a deep ethic and a deep environmental ethic to have low impact, right? Lower your footprint. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, this is fantastic, but shouldn't we actually be striving to have a greater impact, like a better outcome for civilization? So I think you can always reduce, right? Reduce your environmental footprint, reduce your technology use. You can reduce everything, but that actually doesn't create a new civilization, right? That doesn't move humanity forward. And so that was my first realization of saying, okay, wait a minute here. I'm happy to have a low footprint, but I actually want to be, moving towards a trajectory where I'm doing a lot of positive things. And in my mind, it's always about positive things with business, because business is a huge lever for creating a world that we're all really excited about and benefit from living in. So I have another one. I have.
Do you want to share while you're going? We can touch on each one and come around. Go ahead while you got it.
Okay, I think another one that I had. So I would say that one that I have is probably back in the 2006 time period. I had another one. I would say in 2026, I'd been doing a lot of inner work and also really trying to understand how I was showing up in the world. And I was talking to one of my coaches. And it was in January of 2022, and she says, "Carrie, how are you?" And I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. I wasn't so bold to say great because I didn't feel great. But I'm like, I'm good. She's like, "Are you really?" And I go on to explain some details about both my business side of things and my marriage. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm good." And she knew I wasn't. And I got off the call and I just said, how long am I going to keep lying to myself? And I think that we tell ourselves stories, and I know I did, of like, nope, nope, I'm content. I have a beautiful life. Everything is good. When at the core, I was out of steam. I tried everything to get in a place where I felt better about things. So anyway, that kind of started the great unraveling of changing my life quite a bit. But I think that there's those moments that just hit you and you go, what am I doing? You know, is this really working for me? Is this like life path that I've been on, or is this like life approach, belief system working for me?
Wow. It seems like both. I mean, we can figure this out as we go because you've presented two puzzle pieces, and now I have to feel like a detective to see how they connect. But it seems like there's some connective tissue between both of the moments. I want to go to that first moment real quick, if you don't mind. You said you were like in the middle of this river rafting trip to Grand Canyon. Great visual, love the outdoors, but everything you felt or experienced was about reduction or lowering a footprint or making maybe yourself smaller. Like, what was it about that I don't know if triggering is the right word, but maybe made you say to yourself, I should be playing like bigger elsewhere? Like was that at your forefront of thought?
Totally, totally. I mean, I think part of it was, and I think there's a couple things. Part of it was like the belief system I grew up with, but I also worked at Intel, and where we knew technology is changing the world, right? In beautiful ways. I know that people get scared about the concerns, but technology, and specifically computing, has changed the world in ways that are just kind of, unmanageable, unfathomable, I don't know, 5 decades ago, 6 decades ago. And so this idea of hunkering down and living a much more simple life, and not not engaging with all the systems, which I often think happens when people are really looking at the environmental impact, hasn't sat well with me. I'm like, yes, of course we can do these things, but let's actually use all the talents that we have for technology. So we have to have a bigger life. And so that was like me also saying, okay, Carrie, what are you going to do? And that one right there really shifted my career trajectory when I just said, okay, I got to go do something different. Thankfully, I was able to do that at Intel. It was, I felt like it was I was very fortunate to be able to do that within the company. But anyway, it was that idea of like, no, let's go do something amazing.
Yeah. So beyond that trip, I totally resonate. And you kind of have coming to that, hey, like there's more for me, there's a bigger life. What was driving you to maybe play small, maybe from a career perspective, up until that point?
I don't think I was playing small. I think in my mind, I wasn't playing small, right? I was, I felt like I was climbing the corporate ladder, so I wasn't playing small. I think it was a shift. I think there's like, are you playing small? Or are you just not utilizing, being utilized in the best way possible, really engaging in your strengths? So that's where it was. I don't think it was limiting. I think it was just this idea. But I do think it's the communities that we hang out with at times. And I think, having a set of friends that are really saying, how do we just engage in making things lower impact, like the Patagonia community. Love Patagonia as a company, love the ethos and everything that they've done. But I think there's also this idea at times that goes along with it of how do you reduce and go back? And there's parts of that that's saying we're not going back. So for me, it's also just saying, how do I shift a whole perspective?
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that's smart thinking and clearly some good thought that came to you. So when you went through this, you came out of the canyon and you're looking at the great adventure of life. What were some of those shifts that you ended up maybe making, or kind of looking at your life personally, professionally, and saying, hey, I'm going to go reach for the stars? And then what happened?
Yeah. So it didn't take me that long, actually. I saw an opportunity, and I really started working towards engaging with Intel and representing them on the environmental affairs perspective. And then from there, I just kept navigating into a place where I was able to help form their corporate sustainability group. This was back in 2009. And it was my dream job at the time. And I still think, looking back, I'm like, that was fabulous. But that was, I would say, in the early days of corporations actually formalizing sustainability groups and formalizing um, roles that would play as an integrative effort across all the different business units. So anyway, I felt like I just kind of kept navigating my career in a way that put me in a place where I was really excited about the intersection of companies doing amazing work from an economic perspective and from putting out good products into the world and doing it well.
It's neat. It's neat how you saw, you talked about the Patagonia vibe, but you said, you could see this at Intel, which is a major technology company, and you could, mix sustainability, sounds like, with innovation and the front line of technology.
For sure. For sure.
What was that like driving sustainable product, let's say sustainable product development, or driving, the way companies roll things out? Like, was that always like something you wanted to do? You said this was a dream job. Like, where did that passion, what was the impetus for that?
Honestly, in high school, I started, so early 90s, I started really reading and understanding Donna Meadows' systems thinking and limits to growth. She was part author on, and I didn't even know her name at the time. So this was just more of, I started reading these publications, and I also got really interested in, I guess, probably early days of college, Paul Hawkins and Amory Levin's, like natural capitalism, and really thinking about there's lots of different types of capital, including human capital, right? Environmental capital, human capital, there's different types of capital. And so, yes, obviously, financial capital is critical. You can't really do anything without it, or you can't do much without it. But there's different types of capital. So I don't know, I just got turned on to it. I felt like I was always reading things, and thank you to my mother for always trying to get me to read different interesting things. It took hold.
Yeah. Well, talk about that a little bit more. You talked about like systems thinking, and then the relationship between systems and how like much you can grow. I mean, unpack that for us.
Well, I think when we understand systems thinking, we start thinking about everything in terms of the systems, right? There's ecological systems, there's biological systems, there's economic systems, and oftentimes those really interact and intersect, especially in the business side, because we're using natural resources to make things. And so I think really starting to think about from a systems perspective, how does this all work together? And so taking a very holistic approach is important. I've always loved business. I don't know where I got it. I just love business. I love the transactions. I love making money. I love markets. I think it's fascinating. And so that just, I don't know where that came from. But I love business. And so this idea of how do you apply systems thinking to business? Obviously, people do it all the time when it comes to opening up markets and being strategic, but I think there's lots of ways to look at it.
Yeah. So, I mean, on that note, right, like, I mean, you've had a pretty prolific business career. We'll get to your transition and all the things that you've been doing in that space. But when you think about the systems thinking approach, and you think about Intel, and you think about what you did after, and you kind of scaling a big company, like maybe share some moments in which this awareness and interest and understanding of systems thinking has been like birthed right inside of the companies that you've been part of, and then that ultimately helps shape XYZ to happen.
For sure. So one of the things I loved about SecondMuse was one of the founders was a dear friend of mine, Todd Kozane, and he had been thinking about really kind of economics from a business or from a systems perspective and from a biological perspective. So he's a MD by training, and so he thinks about how do bodies work and how does the economy work, very similar to bodies. And so it's this whole systems approach. And I felt like I was coming at things from a environmental perspective or ecological systems. And so we started taking clients down a journey of saying, if you're trying to intervene in a system and improve things, you have to understand that. And how does that relate to market opportunities? And so we partnered with MIT and the systems thinking lab there, and engaged some of the world's leading experts on systems mapping, and really started to do deep dives and taking that to clients. And thankfully, there's clients out there that are really interested in it, Nike being one of them that was just so bought in on this idea of trying to understand the system. If you're trying to understand, where does innovation live? How do you innovate? Where do you innovate on new products? How do you open up new markets? And it's understanding the system perspective. But it applies to different types of humanitarian opportunities. It applies to, I would say, understanding how do you shift in general markets. For example, we did it across the board in terms of kind of what would be traditionally for-profit industries, looking at opportunities for innovation and new investment, policy levers. But we also did it in the place that typically nonprofits would play. And so it really became a cornerstone of the type of work we did, is taking people on a journey through the system.
Got it. Okay. And it sounds like maybe I could be wrong, but we're right. You had a specific process or you had a way of going about this is repeatable. Is that fair?
We did. Absolutely. Yeah. And they still do. Like they're still doing well, and they still do.
Cool. So if I throw a softball at you, can I see how you hit it? Can I give you a scenario and you kind of unpack it for me? Oh, great. Perfect. I didn't know that.
I was the only girl in like second grade. I was the only girl on the baseball team at the time.
Good for you. There you go. I like it. What position?
I'm trying to remember back in the day when I played softball, I played shortstop or somewhere in the outfield, but shortstop was my fun hot seat.
Okay, awesome. You were a star. You were like the inspiration for all the guys. It's pretty good at a young age. So tell me about, give me a dream industry. Like give me a dream industry or a dream company that you would like aspire to work with, work for, partner with. Like what comes to mind?
I think there's so many. Honestly, and I feel like I've gotten the benefit of working with a lot of them, right? I think the apparel industry is very interesting. If you just look at some of the biggest letters on the apparel industry, the energy industry is transitioning. We know that right now. But food industry, if I guess maybe one of the ones that would be so fascinating is the food industry, because it has so much impact on people's health, on the environment, on workers. It is such a fascinating industry. But there's, honestly, if I look across the board, there's so many industries and a lot of them that are doing really innovative things.
Got it. You have like Sprouts is pretty big in New Mexico, right?
It is, yes.
Okay, I remember going to a Sprouts in New Mexico.
Oh yeah, I love Sprouts. It's my quick Instacart order.
Good. I'm on two things here: your grocery chain and your sports. So let's just say
out here.
I'm for figuring out the puzzle pieces here. So let's say Sprouts was going to hire you for a big innovation and transformation for food production and supply to achieve XYZ objectives, right? Like, I'm just curious, like, how do you take your systems thinking and your innovation and transformation kind of methodologies and then take that into a corporate setting that can ultimately have a massive, effect on, what's consumed, where it's consumed from? Like, what would you look at and how would you apply, maybe, I know this is a broad, question here, so roll with it, and then apply that to a drive, maybe an outcome that like they were looking for. Like, how does that break down for you?
Well, I think the first thing, whether it's Sprouts executive team and the board or right, kind of that angle, really understanding what is the objective, because you always have to have some boundaries and constraints. What is the problem you're solving for, or what is the goal you're trying to achieve? And those are kind of flip sides of each other, right? Because it has to be both. An understanding of what you're trying to achieve and put some sort of boundaries around it. Obviously, the more complex it gets, having, supporting as many regenerative farmers as possible at a price point that keeps us financially solvent. I don't know, something along those lines. But start to understand and start to map out what are all the different flows? How are things working now? And start looking where are the pain points. So I think of it as, right, an understanding of the system and using visuals and using processes. So I love systems maps. I actually just sent this to a friend a couple weeks ago, on how do you think about systems maps and how do they uncover levers and opportunities. And then you start bringing your, strategic planning, standard business tools to the table and starting to dive in there. So I think it's kind of a merging of a lot of different processes and tools.
Got it. Interesting. So what I'm hearing you say is like this is a very holistic process. We're not going to just get under the hood of a spreadsheet and make a quick decision. We're going to map out everything of like the chains of how things are working across the board, and we're going to connect those pieces and attack each one. So the sum change, individual parts change creates a greater sum long term. Is that
Totally, exactly. The other thing that I think I will add that's a bit more, though we also did that previously at SecondMuse, but I always say, and what does the user think? I feel like I'm a fabulous test case as a user. So I really thought about this a lot when I had my son. My son's 11 now, that I really didn't have time to go get all of my leafy greens from my a local farmer, whether it's the local farm or the farmer's market, and chop them all up. Honestly, at some point you just have to say what's the higher priority. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy more packaged stuff because it's more important for me to have healthy, high quality food and feed my son vegetables. And so I really think about oftentimes from a business perspective, you have to understand the consumer, the client, the user, call it, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, understanding, some of those behaviors, decision points from a consumer perspective is absolutely critical as well.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So there's a mix of strong capitalism in the sense of, hey, it's not just good if it's good for the consumer, it's going to be good for the company. And we're going to help the company achieve some of these things through, got it. So now I'm starting to understand why holistic health and roughing and all these other practices that you like make sense. So this is like a lived value of yours. It's not just in business, but it's life,
I mean, I try. Yeah. Every day I try.
Great. Okay. If you're a founder looking to grow without raising capital or giving up control, Relent is built for you. Founded by entrepreneurs who've scaled without outside funding, Relent helps companies find and retain talent, lower operational costs, and reinvest in growth. We've hired nearly 10 team members through Relent and streamlined our entire cost structure, freeing up capital to put toward what matters most. Even small teams can set up offshore operations quickly, compliantly, and without heavy infrastructure. With deep expertise in the India-US corridor, Relent combines cultural fluency with operational rigor and guides everything from team design to long-term scaling. Grow on your terms and start with Relent. To learn more, visit relent.team/arcbound. How'd we do in terms of the discussing the business side and kind of the expansion of the Carrie container? Does that, on the business side, does that serve kind of what you're looking for? Is there any other points that we want to dive into before we shift gears?
Yeah. I think we got it. I mean, I truly think that like business is the strongest lever. It's super exciting. And there's more we can always do as business leaders. So I really hope to help business leaders think through that.
Yeah. Could totally see you on like executive roundtables with all these, corporate innovation leaders. And they're like, I need help. And they're like, Carrie, there you are. All right. So we're going to pivot 16 years, if my math's right, from 06 to January 2022 to the, sounds like personal life transition and transformation of sorts. Where shall we start the conversation? What was the moment of unwinding?
Yeah. This is one of those things where I'm always like, oh gosh, I always want to be careful of the other parties involved in anything I share. But I think I started realizing that it was time for changes. I had been working on things for years. I've been praying, quite frankly. I've been trying to convince myself to be content, to feel all the privilege that I had. And then at some point I'm like, yeah, but this doesn't feel good. And so I think when I really started getting into but what does Carrie need? What feels good for Carrie? And what has she tried? And it was a big awakening of just saying, like, look, at that point, I'd been in therapy for years. I had tried all sorts of things. I'd brought in external, consultants and organizational development people, and basically an OD type counselor, therapist for my business partners. I tried all sorts of things in my marriage, and maybe I was ineffective, but I just couldn't seem to get the changes that were going to feel good for me. And that was hard because I kind of think of myself as a hard worker, a grinder. Be grateful for what you have and keep going. And I think at some point you have to just say, okay, am I going to live the rest of my life like this? And the answer for me was no. So anyway, the great unraveling. And I'm still in it. I'm not. I mean, I've transitioned out. But there are times where I'm like, oh, wow, it's a slow process.
Yeah. What was like, if you don't mind me asking more specifically, like what wasn't working? And then how do you get to the point where it was like, I just can't do this way anymore?
Yeah. Yeah. I think what wasn't, I think that when things aren't working, and you've tried everything, primarily in relationships, feeling valued, getting through to things, you just have to say, is this the right place for me? And I would say that I kind of felt the same thing. So obviously I'm the common denominator, but I felt that with regards to both the company that I was, leading at the time, as well as part owner of. And it was me and 3 wonderful men that I was working with. And I'd been trying to, both on the business side, right, from a like, hey, what are we doing on some of the business things, but also with regards to my role and just, all the things that go along with that. Didn't feel like it was going where I wanted it to. And quite frankly, I think I'd also done a lot of what I had hoped to achieve as well. I was married for a long time, and I had a young son. And I think I had also tried to make that the most harmonious, wonderful relationship. And I wasn't successful at doing that. And so at some point you just have to say, obviously I was contributor, but after you've done all the work and you don't know where else to go, then you just say, okay, what am I going to do?
Seems like a lot of,
and it's hard. I think the other thing is, outwardly it looked like everything was beautiful, right? SecondMuse is an amazing company, right? So much impact. I'd won global awards. Company's fantastic. I had what appeared to be a beautiful marriage, home, life, all of that. So anyway, not that matters, but it kind of does, because I know people like, wow.
Yeah, like 2 of your most important life foundations were kind of at an expiration date.
Yeah, I think an expiration date's a nice way to put it.
Yeah. So when you kind of accepted, right? And I'm not saying you were fighting it, but it's like you kind of got to this point of, okay, I know it's time to shift. But sometimes the jumping off the cliff is a lot harder than just looking over the ledge. So what's changed for you? Like what were your first, like, for those listening, right, who are maybe at that ledge of expiration and they're like, gotta jump, but have no idea which direction to go, which platform to land on first, and know it's going to be a pretty tough ride down. What do you do?
Well, I think I started really thinking about fear. I think in so many areas of my life, I've seemed fearless previously. Right? Going after business opportunities, athletic endeavors, extreme adventures. Just, I kind of went for it all the time on so many levels. And then I just realized I was so scared of the unknown. I think that was the thing, right? The big unknowns of life. And I guess I probably did a lot of meditation. I meditated my way through COVID. I still meditate, but if you couldn't go out, kind of my motto to myself was, if you can't go out and do things, you might as well go deep inside, right? I'd meditated before that as well, but I traveled a lot. I had lots of things going on, and so I just really used that opportunity in COVID to go deeper. But I think there's a host of different tools, honestly, and processes that I think can really help people if they're trying to get through that. And I definitely employed a lot of those myself. I'm almost certified. I'm not certified yet as a wayfinder coach. Martha Beck is really renowned as one of the leading life coaches, and I was so inspired by her and all of the stuff that she puts out there that I went and went through her training. And so I think there's just different tools. I definitely think having a guide of some sort, whatever they are, to help you through, that's amazing. I'm fortunate to have a ton of great friends and a great communities of people, so that I was supported along the way, my launch pad, if you will. And no, it's going to be hard, and we'll get through it. And then I think there's other things, right? How do you surrender? How do you surrender to something greater? I think there's all these, this is where I feel like there's the specifics of life. And then I think there's really kind of the spiritual sides, what people would call spiritual sides of life, of just faith, that has to come into play. And I'm still in it, right? I'm like, I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly what's coming next on all those things. So how do you sit in that space? I don't think I've arrived.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever will arrive.
I don't know if we ever will, right? So I was laughing this morning, looking at my house, and my son's first week of school, and new school, and middle school, and I'm like, oh my gosh, things look chaotic here. This is not how I like to be. How I like to be doing. I was up at 4:30 this morning, and I'm doing all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, wow, seems like chaos. This seems like messiness. I'm like, well, actually, most of life is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a nice perspective for sure. Grounding perspective of, hey, this is how it is. You can't cover it all up. Now, I think, so it sounds like you found support, people, networks, coaches, you found the concoction, the holistic way to approach this. You approach your own transformation, right? This wasn't the company transformation anymore. This was the Carrie transformation. As you were looking at all these disparate parts that you started to see connected together, what were some of the things that were maybe glaring at you in the mirror that you had to maybe unlearn or unwire, right, the way they were kind of fixed, that maybe you weren't expecting to find?
Yeah. The unlearning continues, I think. I think there's been some really profound things, but I would say even one of the most profound things is understanding our patterns and understanding why we do things the way that we do. I have been loving the work on our parts, so kind of the internal family system stuff, to help us understand ourselves. For many, many years that I'd learned about, what is the inner child doing, what's happening there. But I think doing a deep dive and giving yourself grace. But I do feel like there are certain things where I'm like, oh, you know what? When I was 6 years old, I, wasn't encouraged to use my words. My mouth was washed out with soap. I'm like, that probably wasn't very helpful in me trying to defend myself. And so trying to understand in some of those moments, whether it's communication, oftentimes it's communication, I think, for me, like what is happening inside of me that is making me communicate less effectively. I know that's an example.
So that was a real example.
Oh yeah, that's a real example.
Oh, I didn't know if you were speaking like, oh wow. So you were more suppressed.
Yeah, I think so. For sure, for sure. And I mean, I started cussing at a very young age, and I grew up in a very morally upright, you know, loving formal setting. And I started learning really bad cuss words as a way to defend myself at a very young age.
Is your rebellion? Cuss words were your rebellion. Got it.
I think it was my defense mechanism. I think it was my protection mechanism because I didn't know what else to do. Right. And so when we think about little kids in general, and we think about people that have, anger outbursts or any sort of thing, you're like, well, what happened here? So, for me, I think it was my defense mechanism because nothing else seemed to be working.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I'm going to bring this around, I promise. But I was in New York, and I have a friend. I was in New York like 5 years ago. I was about to leave to come out west. And I spent the night with my friend Chris, not like with him, but like he's just a friend. It's like you have a place to stay. But he had a murder sentence. He had killed someone. He was in jail for like 15 years. And so he wrote a book called The Master Plan. And it's interesting, like great guy. But when you read the book, you realize that what you see on the surface and his federal record isn't like, it makes sense, like where he grew up and like what was behind it. And it's like when you look at people in jail, it's like, okay, well, if you unpack it all, like it probably makes sense if you dive into it. Not that like what they did maybe were the right behaviors, but when you have a set of circumstances, it's going to shape how you show up in the world and decisions you make. And so it sounds like you discovered that. So let me ask you another question. When you like came to that realization for yourself and you said, okay, like I realized that, like what changed? Like how did that learning of, hey, like I didn't talk a ton growing up and, I lashed out with cuss words, but once you kind of identified that pattern, what was the kind of the next stage of, Carrie 2.0, and like, how are you different now than maybe you were in 2019 when certain things
Brian,
happened?
I talked a lot when I was younger. I think I probably just didn't share all of my feelings.
Oh, sorry. Maybe
I haven't been suppressed, and I still cuss. So is it?
Okay. Sorry if I haven't fully gotten it right, but go ahead.
But I get the question. I think there's a couple of things that have really, all this has helped me come from a place of, I think better leadership, better relationships, etc. And the first one is truly understanding my own triggers, right? Understanding my own triggers, understanding my own patterns, and creating mechanisms to not let those come out. In fairness, I don't think they always come out, but when you really see any sort of negative dynamic in the workplace, in your relationships, you have to understand how you're contributing. So I think I definitely can understand that a lot better. I've done it. I've always done it. I also have a ton more empathy for people, right? And understanding. And so I think in both relationships and from a leadership perspective, I'm like, I get it. I get that. I understand things better. So I think the biggest things where this has taken me is and I would say I've had the good, I've been blessed to be able to work with some of the most amazing individuals, organizations in the world, truly, and leaders in those organizations. And I truly, truly believe that so many of the challenges that we're facing are because people aren't dealing with their own stuff, right? It's dynamics, it's their own belief systems, and you can have these amazing things. And if you can't actually get through to people, and if people aren't recognizing their own role in things, then innovation halts. Products don't get designed, mechanisms don't get put in place, things don't happen. And so I've really started to think about kind of what is my role in helping in that area.
Yeah, that's special. I mean, I agree with you. The more I've also continued on that journey the last 4 or 5 years in different ways, or stop starts. But I agree. I think it's to know parts of yourself is a gift. You give to the world and to yourself, but it's hard to go there. So you said something that you've been able to work with the most like amazing people and brands. I mean, you've talked about at the beginning where this started, taking companies through kind of their own transformations and looking at things systematically and improving processes and scaling all the things that like you make you with this like beautiful, intuitive and thoughtful side. And then you talked about, oh, I have kind of taken down myself through this transformation. Like I was doing it for all these other amazing orgs and people, but that's been the Carrie time. And now as you're kind of looking, out of the tunnel, so to speak, and you're, kind of figuring out, hey, like this is who I want to be, or, I am this in the world and I'm doing, why in the world, what, I know you're working with some people to walk them through the path that you've been on, but like, what is the life of Carrie today, in terms of, work, personal? Give us the scoop.
You want the scoop? Everyone wants the scoop.
Is that what people say? Am I softball the scoop?
And I'm like, wouldn't you like to know? So I feel like I'm still getting tugged on more of a professional and service. I'm still tugged between, do I really continue to lead organizations? I'm currently the CEO and general manager of a winery and distillery. I have other opportunities that are really more business centric. And I love it. I love learning new things. And at the same time, I am in the place where I do get called on for people to support them in their journeys, right? From a coaching perspective or advising perspective. I'm in the process of really putting together more of a speaking service, if you will. I've been public speaking for 17 years, but really more of the what is Carrie offering to the world. I'm in talks with the book publisher. So I think there's lots of things, and it's for me to actually just go sort out. And I think, quite honestly, it's part me sorting stuff out, narrowing things down, part me being open to what the universe says and going from there. So that's where I am right now. I've got a fabulous 11-year-old son. We're in the throes of the first week of sixth grade. So anyway, trying to keep the metaphorical wheels on the bus. Right? Trying to get my morning workouts, eat healthy, all the stuff. So anyway, all that too, which is never as exciting, right?
Yeah. Well, your son's lucky to have you, but you're making me wonder how my mom put up with me and my sister. I was definitely the problem child. So you definitely have your hands full, I'm sure, kind of taking your son through this. But he's lucky to have a mom that probably is so integrated and help be a healthy male in the world, which will be good. Well, I hope so. One of the things I was questioning is, you talk about this spiritual side of kind of like listening and letting things come to you with this ambition of, like it sounds like you're at a place where you could do more in certain ways, and that, but so how do you balance like the intuition of like kind of letting where you are be like sit with also knowing, hey, like there's maybe even more for me that I can pursue, but how do you balance both sides and then think about decisions for your own life and career from those different vantage points when it's not all like heady in your decision making?
I think a lot of it starts with like, what am I feeling? Like, what am I like emotionally? What am I feeling? What am I feeling in my body? And just trying to sit with that and recognizing that our feelings matter. I would say for a lot of my life, I was just very much in my head. Does this make sense? Financially, does it make sense? Does it make, does this what I think is the right thing to do, versus just really sitting with myself and saying, but do I want to do that? And so, some of the tools that I learned early on in my deep dive journey, 5 years ago, is making a list of saying, what am I doing that is in the should column? I think I should be doing versus I want to be doing or I need to be doing, or I don't want to do it. And just starting to get super clear. And there's these sorts of things where you're just really deeply checking in with yourself. Doing body scans, Our bodies are way advanced and smarter than, sometimes our head at letting us know when things feel right and they don't. And if you would have heard me 15 years ago saying that, I'd been like, she is loopy. So but I really firmly believe that it's important to do those things. And so I check in with myself on a regular basis. And so I'm still continuing to. Obviously, meditation is key. I feel like, the praying and the meditation go hand in hand. When you're out there praying, you're putting yourself out there, and the meditation is when you're getting the divine guidance. So I think there's just different types of things that I do on a regular basis. But a lot of it's just truly getting in tune with myself. And it sounds very different, I think, for those of us that really live in a deeply left brain, analytical, or ROI type of sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's probably hard to get out of. Again, it's like, where do you go next, and what do you do?
What do you want? I think that's what do you really want, right?
Yeah, I remember when a therapist asked me that like 6 years ago. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you want? Anyways, yeah, I think it's a good question. And bodies, go ahead.
I was going to say, what would you do if you knew that everything was going to be okay?
I have a meditation I listen to every morning, and it says, it's everything is always working out. It's like, that's the title. It's all working out, or whatever. But yeah, it kind of takes this pressure off in a way,
Yeah. Yeah. What would you be doing if you actually thought it would all be fine?
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to move through the world. Carrie, for those listening and are contemplating this stepping off the cliff, obviously they can, work with people like you. What about books or videos or things that like were supportive, maybe tools to you that might kind of aid someone on this journey as well as working with someone like yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's definitely different authors, tools that I love. I think that, The Way of Integrity, Martha Beck's book, I think that is fabulous. I'm a huge fan of that. I think that there's others more detail oriented, that also do deeper dives into this. Earlier this year, I got turned on to, the Surrender Experiment, The Untethered Soul. And, I had to bring those back out literally like just the other day. I'm like, Carrie, are you saying yes to things that are coming your way? So I think there's different books. But I also think that, for most people, and myself included, it's go find different types of inspiration and things that move you, right? You can get these types of teachers, call them spiritual teachers, call them influencing things. You can get them anywhere, right? You can get them off Instagram. You can get them out in nature. But I think anything that is giving you a pause and helping you really kind of just sit there and think through things or feel your way through things. So I love books. At some point I'll get back more into reading books for fun. I've started to, but yeah, I think there's lots of different ways, and there's lots of ways that people can do it if they don't have all the resources. So books are fabulous for that.
That's awesome. I agree. Those two books you mentioned, reread one of them this year, and picked it back up. It's actually right here, Carrie. Look at this.
Let's see this book.
Look at this.
See, there you go.
Speaking it, I read it years ago, and I pulled it out a few months ago, and it hasn't moved since I picked it up again. But I was like, I know that book's circling around my orbit. So anyways, Carrie, this has been wonderful as always. Where can people find the one and only Carrie Freeman and reach out and connect?
Well, definitely on LinkedIn is the best way to connect with me right now. I'm about to launch my own personal platform. And so that'll be linked on LinkedIn. It'll be carrie-freeman.com. It's not quite there yet, so stay tuned. But it will be there, and I would love to hear from you.
We'll get this out right around or after launch, so you have something to go with it. Cool. Carrie, thanks so much. This was a joy. Today's journey traced two pivots, from doing less to building more, and from looking fine to living true. We heard how a Canyon epiphany led to Intel's sustainability build-out, into using systems maps with partners like MIT and Nike to find real leverage. Then we turned the lens inward as Carrie named fear of the unknown, chose honesty, meditated through the mess, and rebuilt with help from community and Wayfinder tools. If one idea lingers, let it be this: business can be a force for civilization building, and the leader you bring to it depends on the inner work you're willing to do. If the episode helped, leave a review, share it with a friend, and tell us which chapter hit home. New episodes drop every Tuesday and Friday. See you next time.